Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. So, I've been making some videos and little posts lately, mainly on the topic and the subject of fitness and health. But I don't want anybody to get it twisted. My day job is still being imam. However, I am doing those with a purpose, which is to encourage, especially guys, right? To be healthy, be strong, and all of that. And so, as I had mentioned in one of the other videos a short while back, right? There's a difference between having a plan and having a program, right? Plan is fikra, right? But it's an idea, right? But a program is al-Kayfiyya, right? Al-Juz'iyyat, right? How do you get down to the brass tacks of bringing that idea to fruition, insha'Allah. And I actually want to talk about specifically that, the idea of having a goal, but also connected to, obviously, we understand that goals can only be actualized illa bima sha Allah, only by what Allah allows to come about. And so, as I put in the little title here, right, how we understand the Quran is important from two different perspectives. And some of this will be like language theory, but we can use it in a very layman's term, right? And one is prescriptive versus descriptive, right? And so when does the Quran speak prescriptively and when does it speak descriptively, and how is that important for us as regular old, Abdullah and Amatullah, like regular old Joe Schmo Muslims? How is that important to us? So for instance, let's look at Sūrah al-Kahf, right, which is just the gift that keeps on giving from Allah, right? Every Friday, the Prophet ﷺ would have this as part of his, according to hadith, his habit was to read. And so I'm just going to cover two ayat from this as it relates to planning and then programming as it relates to prescriptive and versus descriptive. So Allah Ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا. And Allah says what? And most assuredly, do not say, I am doing something tomorrow, إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ Allah. Except that you amend or append that statement by recognizing that nothing comes about except by Allah's will. So this is important because some may understand this on a top level descriptively. Right? Allah is simply describing, like, this is the nature of reality. Nothing happens unless I allow it to happen. But I feel that the way that this may sink into our fiber, it may be interpreted, though, however, prescriptively, in that that's what one ought to do. Of course, there is the command here, right? وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ. Okay, هذا في صيغة الأمر, right? This is definitely, it's a command. Most assuredly, don't say I'm doing something tomorrow, unless, right, إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ Allah, unless Allah wills. The problem with this is that the focus is on the command, right? And I know that might sound like, what do you mean the problem? Well, what I mean is that while obviously we want to obey the commandments of Allah, that's a no-brainer, right? And this is important as a kind of like metaphysical thing, right? Like we understand that we don't have total agency, right? That ultimately Allah is the deciding one for how things happen. But what I mean here is that though we are told, don't say I'm doing something tomorrow unless you say that Allah wills, it doesn't say don't say I'm not doing something tomorrow. Meaning that you should have plans, right? And so I've been talking about plan versus program, planning versus programming. And that, as I said, right, it's, there's a big difference between having a plan by itself versus having a plan with a program to actualize it. But at the same time, the plan is kind of like what gets the ball rolling. So we should have plans. We should have goals. We should have objectives. And this will be both from, well, what is it that I have to do that Allah has commanded me to do, right? Pray, fast, give zakah, those kinds of things. But then also, it will come from the imagination. What do I want to do with myself? What do I want to do with my life? What goals do I have? I want to get off my diabetes medication. I want to lose weight. I want to feel strong again as a man. Whatever you're, right? That is a goal. Nothing blameworthy about that. But it is not something that is prescriptive in the Quran. Rather, that would be something descriptive, right? Whatever it is that you're going to do, because it's open-ended here. This is a kind of a lafz mutlaq, right? It's a open-ended statement. وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. It's an open-ended statement. And so we have to make sure that we are putting the bulk of the emphasis of understanding this not only on, okay, if I'm not going to say I'm going to do something unless I say, obviously, inshallah, and I mean that in my heart, but I don't allow that to block me from dreaming. I don't allow that to block me from having goals, objectives, ideals, things that I want to achieve as a Muslim, even for those things that are not necessarily prescriptively in the Quran. Right? Losing weight. There's nothing in the Quran that's going to tell you, because that depends. I mean, if you're like a really skinny person, well, then you don't need to lose weight. Right? And so I have to be able to look at my life as a total. And I have to, obviously, whatever I'm doing, look at the commandments of Allah, and I do my best to fulfill those. But I also need to look at my life in general. What do I want to do with the time that I'm here? What goals do I want to accomplish? What makes me feel good, right? What makes me feel good? What makes me happy? What satisfies me? Whatever that it is. And so I feel like sometimes, and we know, when one Muslim asks another Muslim something, hey, are you going to do this, or can you do that? Inshallah. We usually know when another Muslim says, unfortunately, inshallah, it's like laysa abadan. It's like it ain't never happening, right? And so this passage here should be actually one to open up the possibilities and the potentials for a believer's life versus constraining them. There's no constraint here. The only constraint is just don't say it illa ayyasha Allah. But it's not saying don't say, right? We have to make sure that we understand that actually هذا الأمر بالشرط, right? This is a command that has a very profound condition to it, and that condition is so that, of course, we recognize, right, وَمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ, right, that we recognize Allah's station. But it should also make us want to dream. It's one of my favorite lines from Inception, the movie that came out several years ago, from, what's this guy, Tom Hardy's character, and he's like, you have to dream a little bigger, right? And he pulls out this giant gun. And so, have your goals. Have your goals. But then, yes, if you want to take your goals beyond the infant stage to the actualization stage, then yeah, you need to have a program. Now, whether we have the plan and whether we have the program, illa ayyasha Allah. We understand that, right? It ain't going to happen unless that's what Allah decrees. So today, inshallah, if you read as part of your habit, Surah al-Kahf, right, the 18th chapter today. Take a moment when you get to this passage and think about that, right? Think about, what do you want to do? In talking with a friend of mine the other day, we were discussing, he's like, looks like, you've made some changes, you're working out, this and that, and I said, I realized that, at 50 years old, I've lived statistically, illa ayyasha Allah, right? Statistically, I've lived more than half of my life, right? And it's hard to think, like, wow, in 10 years, I'll be 60, insha'Allah. In 20 years, I will be 70, insha'Allah. And that those ages will be really interesting and potentially challenging decades if I am allowed to see them. And they will not be like from 20 to 30 or 30 to 40, right? They will be quite different. And so it's just made me want to rethink with a greater priority, what do I want to do, right, with the time that I'm here? Because to continue the ayah, وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ إِذَا نَسِيتَ. Remember your Lord when you have forgotten. That's a very also profound statement. You've forgotten, but remember your Lord when you forget, which means you're going to forget. You're going to be forgetful. It's part of your nature to be forgetful. Remember, right? وَقُلْ, right? And say, right? This is interesting. وَقُلْ. A lot of times when you see the command of qul in the Quran, it is Allah Ta'ala instructing the Prophet ﷺ, say these specific words. But here, وَقُلْ عَسَىٰ أَن يَهْدِيَ رَبِّي لِأَقْرَبَ مِنْ هَذَا رَشَدًا, right? And say, perhaps my Lord will guide me, right, to something closer and better than this, right? Be more rightly guided. And so here the command of qul, say, it's giving us a kind of motto. It's giving us, I don't know, kind of like our version of hoorah, right? And remind yourself, right? Because the tendency is to get down. Sometimes we hit a wall, or we thought we were going to do, right? Don't say that you're going to do something tomorrow, right? I'm doing something tomorrow, unless you say, that only if Allah wills. Perhaps it will be that Allah will not will for that thing to happen. And then what can happen with that? You can have a downfall in your mood. You can have a downfall in your iman. And what does that come from? Nisyan. Comes from forgetfulness, right? وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ إِذَا نَسِيتَ وَقُلْ عَسَىٰ أَن يَهْدِيَ رَبِّي, right? لِأَقْرَبَ مِنْ هَذَا رَشَدًا. And so it's to pick yourself back up, right? Dust yourself off, and go back to the planning stage. وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ. Don't say something's going to happen tomorrow. I'm doing something tomorrow. And go back to the planning stage, right? Don't give up. You are going to be on this kind of perpetual cycle. And so it's extraordinary life advice from our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu Rabbul Alamin, Rabbul Arshil Azim. It is an extraordinary advice to give. So 10:15, got to get ready for Jumu'ah, inshallah. Just wanted to leave this here as a little tidbit to think over. And may Allah Ta'ala bless you in your health, in your iman, in your Islam, and bless you to keep dreaming and to keep working towards those إلا أن يشاء الله. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.